Welcome to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast, where it's all about helping you complete your financial journey to retirement. Discover time-tested strategies and get unconventional insights into wealth building and retirement that actually work. Break away from the herd and go for the retirement you dream of. And now, here's your host, the income engineer, Kraig Strom.
All right, back on Personal Pension Radio, episode number 130. 130, that's amazing. I really appreciate all the support. Thank you so much for being a faithful listener. If you're brand new, welcome to the Personal Pension Radio family. Please share it out there. You can get it on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher. I think it's all over the place, but iTunes is the big one. Share it with your friends and family, people that you like, people that you love. Now, as you heard, I am the income engineer, broadcasting from my studio woodshop here in Southern California. My mission, my goal, is to deliver the retirement dream that Wall Street promised and has promised for so many years, but unfortunately, they're only getting to half the conversation in most cases, which is save more money, save, save, save. And you'll hear more about that as I go through the show. Now, someone asked me recently, just as a reminder, hey, Kraig, you probably should give a little bit more background on who you are. Now, they were a relatively new listener, but it reminded me that these podcasts, of course, folks can't listen to every episode, and I totally understand that, although some have. I actually had a listener that contacted me, and it amazed me. I said, so how do we get in touch? And he said, he was an attorney. He said, I found you through your podcast. And I said, well, that's great. I said, so which episode specifically did you listen to that might have inspired you to call me? And he said, oh, I haven't listened to any of your episodes. I said, well, then how did you find me through the podcast? He says, I read all the transcripts. So I do have the podcast transcribed. The transcriptions are a little behind right now because the website is under construction. So forgive me if you're looking for transcripts so that you can read every single episode transcript. That was kind of amazing to me that he did. In fact, he technically, he consumed my podcast content, but it was basically by reading every single episode. So that was pretty amazing. Now, the whole point was tell your story, Kraig, was somebody had mentioned recently. And of course, I've done that on the podcast a number of times, but just a quick update on me. I am a certified financial planner here in Southern California. I was originally born in Maine, came to California by way of a Disney World family vacation many years ago, which turned out to give us a free flight to California the next year, and the rest is history. We ended up moving to Southern California quite some time ago now. I'm still a Maine boy at heart, but live here in Southern California. Married to my infinitely awesome patient wife, Amy, my now coming up on 20-year-old who's halfway through her time at Northern Arizona University. And we have two fur people, our little pound puppies. And finally, I am a woodworker. I build things in my wood shop. That is my therapy. And I'm also passionate about cars. I actually organize and run a weekly car show. And I have a private car dealership license that I trade, buy and sell cars. So that's me in a nutshell. So let's, if you have any questions, obviously, send them in. With the website down, I've actually been telling folks just to email me at Kraig, Kraig, at kraigstrom.com. And kraigstrom.com, just for the record, goes to my LinkedIn page. So if you go to kraigstrom.com, it will take you right to LinkedIn. You can contact me through the LinkedIn, or you can email me, Kraig at kraigstrom.com. Now, let's jump in. As I mentioned before, I am a certified financial planner. I am not an attorney. I'm not a certified public accountant. So even though, I will tell you I'm very well qualified as a financial planner professional, please don't act on things that you hear on this show. Don't use this show or any other podcast for that matter, and heaven forbid, like a Dave Ramsey radio show or podcast as if you're getting advice for you personally. Please don't do that. Meet with a qualified financial planner. Have them get to know you, get to know them, ask questions, dive in deep before you get a recommendation on some form of action, before you actually take action. And that's the disclosure that I have added into my show for, I forget how long. It's so important that you understand that this is not meant to be advice for you in your specific situation, right? When you work with a certified financial planner professional, for example, they go through a very specific step-by-step process in that financial planning system. It starts with establishing the relationship. Number one, establish a relationship, and that goes both ways. For you as the client, you need to really get to know that financial planner, he or she, find out the details, get to know them. The second step in the financial planning process that certified financial planners follow is we gather data, goals, objectives. We call it hard data, soft data. Hard data is the details about your 401k, your house, your kids, etc. The soft data is how you feel about your current path. How do you feel about retirement? What are your goals? What are your objectives? That's the data gathering process. That's why when I meet with folks, oftentimes they'll say, well, what are you selling? What's your primary thing that you want to do? And my first instinct is to ask lots of questions, gathering data, just asking questions. That's what we should be doing in any initial engagement, any conversation. The third step in the financial planning process when you work with a certified financial planner is analyzing and evaluating that data, that financial status of that client. That's where the financial planner and their team really come into and show their value, is in the analysis of all of that data. And you'll hear me use this term, that macroeconomic data perspective. The next step in the process is developing and presenting that financial planning strategy or recommendation and the alternatives. That's again where that certified financial planning professional comes in, and he or she is now developing and presenting recommendations and alternatives. You notice that's the fourth step down. That's not in the beginning selling something. There's 3 steps previous before you get to that. Then implementing the financial planning recommendations, and finally, working with a good certified financial planner, you're monitoring those financial recommendations and adjusting accordingly. So before you make financial decisions based on something, as I said, heaven forbid, that a financial entertainer gave you on a radio show or podcast, please remember that an actual licensed, really trained, qualified, certified financial planner goes through a very specific set of steps, at least they should, to get to a point where they're helping you implement something. So keep that in mind. Let's get into section 1. This is watch your step. Watch your step. A reminder on this, where this came from when I first started the podcast is I always thought back to my days as a kid in Maine, and when I was working through the summers, I would be out on a farm somewhere picking weeds or cleaning up, sheep, cleaning up after the sheep on a sheep ranch. Just you name it, no matter where I was, you needed to watch your step because you didn't know what you might end up stepping in, right? I want you to be aware of what's out there. Watch your step when you're out there making your way through your financial decisions in life. And you just have to know sometimes there are forces out there all around you that either they're right in your face so close you can't see them, or they're just really subtle in the background. And what I want to talk about today in this section is Parkinson's Law. I've mentioned it on the show before, but Parkinson's Law is one of those very subtle things that creeps into your family financial situation over time And you can really just miss it completely sometimes until it's almost too late, right? I've got two examples of that. And one is a very simple, quick story of a friend of mine who, and this is a person in Texas, good friend. We were talking recently. Actually, he reached out to me, and basically Parkinson's law says that your family or personal expenses, your spending, your purchasing habits increase and rise with your income. Excellent income equals excellent expenses. The Parkinson's law says that expenses rise to meet income. So family expenses rise to meet your income. And this guy, friend of mine in Texas, he basically got himself in serious trouble that his income was really good. Well, that meant that his car collection needed to improve, right? Oh, sure, income goes up and up and up. So now we got to go buy not just one car, but 2 cars, maybe 3 cars. And let's not buy just any car because we've got enough income. We can afford the payments on $90,000 cars, maybe $100,000 cars. We can afford the payments on those because our income is so good. It's going to be great. Well, what happens when the oil industry starts making changes and income is no longer as good as it used to be? Well, he is now in a very difficult position because his expenses rose to meet his income, and then his income changed. Unfortunately, his expenses cannot quickly change without basically repossessions and foreclosures and things like that. So Parkinson's law can be a very dangerous thing. And I was reminded of it again when I had a recent appointment with a husband and wife. We'll call them Tammy and Sean, who are both successful doctors. Now, when I say successful doctors, that's really important there because success as a doctor definitely depends on your definition of success. I'm going to say that success, the most common definition of success that I hear is how much money you make. Well, so these doctors make a lot of money. They're very comfortable with their income. They're a great couple. They're in their 40s. They have 4 kids between them, right? Blended family, 4 kids. Now, they have excellent income, but they are completely experiencing Parkinson's law. Their expenses have risen to meet their income. When we dug in deeper, they admit that years of delayed gratification have made it difficult to resist the urge to spend money now that they have the income. I want you to hear that. Delayed gratification. So most of you know what I'm saying when I think you do. But let me give you their example. As a doctor, you not only go through every single year of school right through to high school, and even in high school, you're often working harder than the average bear to actually get grades good enough to get into college, which will then, lead into the medical school. And it's very difficult. So high school can be very difficult, just making your way through it with the grades necessary to get into med school. Then you get into med school, and you essentially become slave labor in med school. You are just working your tail off in med school. Then, congratulations, you finished med school. Now you can go to residency and your internships, and you can go on to working in your specialty field for another 2 or 3 years while you get your certifications. The point is, for years and years and years, as a doctor, you worked at the most, in some cases, I've talked to doctors that have added it up, they make $15 an hour in their early years with the amount of hours that they have put in when you add up all the time that they have spent, and in many cases, the debt they incurred to go through med school. So I think you get my point. Delayed gratifications, right? They work so hard after high school and college, and then they finally make it, right? The retail world and the investment world, they know exactly what's going on, and they market to doctors accordingly, for sure. Watches, shoes, cars, vacations, houses, right? This doctor and his wife purchased a home. I'm going to give you an example. I know a doctor actually who is a client, and it's very difficult for me as the financial planner to have these folks as clients because I have not been able to pull them off Parkinson's law. They are both making really good money. This is a separate couple. I just want to tell you the story. This is a squirrel moment. This doctor and his wife, doing really well, and yet they just got sucked into Parkinson's law. It's like they could have their photograph next to the definition of Parkinson's law. They purchased a home not long ago that's like 10 times bigger than they needed, right? Now they are buried by taking care of the house, the money and the time expense of caring for the house. They had to have a landscaping team that cost $800-900 a month to take care of the property just outside. And that doesn't cover all of the miscellaneous expenses that the landscaping company incurs when they find broken irrigation lines and this and that and other things, and we got to fix this tree and fix that. That's just $800-900 a month just for the service, the basic service, right? That's amazing, and this house is so much more than they actually needed, right? They could have purchased a house half the size and it still would have been bigger than they needed, but it would have been much more manageable, right? So now back on track with this husband and wife, now another couple of doctors here, Tammy and Sean, that are suffering from Parkinson's law, right? They have been hit with literally just everything that's supposed to come with being a successful, high-income doctor. You're supposed to go on vacation. You don't need to do any bargain hunting for vacation. You just fly business class and pay retail and waste a ton of money. That's, unfortunately, the reality that they're in. They are pitched by investment people all the time, friends of friends in the real estate business. We've got a deal for you. Or the financial advisory community is marketing to doctors like crazy, and they just get pitched all the time. Despite being in the top 10%, maybe higher, of income earners in the nation, this couple is walking the same calf path that I spoke of on last week's show. They are walking that path. Go back and listen to it if you didn't listen to the calf path again. That's just last week's show, episode 129. But they are walking the identical path. So the message I want to get in this point here is that these folks make more money than most people will ever see, right? And they're going to make just millions of dollars over their career, and yet they are in line, just as everyone else is, unfortunately. Most everyone who hasn't listened to my show are in line on that calf path, following the investment advice, following the marketing, all of that stuff that everybody else is, right? They know they need to get off the path. That's the only reason that this could really work, is that this husband and wife, Tammy and Sean, they both know that they overspend largely because of all of the years of delayed gratification they went through to get where they are now. And now that they have all this great income, they're suffering, of course, from Parkinson's law. They know they need to get off that path. So I took them through the 4 wealth objectives. You can actually go back to episode 127 and listen to this, and I'll just give you a quick run through. I took them through the 4 wealth objectives. We talked about efficiency first. Always seek efficiency first when it comes to spending money or making an investment. And in their case, it was stop paying retail. They basically just pay retail for everything. They bought brand new cars. They, when I ask questions about very fancy clothes and shoes and watches, he knows exactly what I'm talking about because he has some in the closet upstairs. One of my favorite examples of stop paying retail was, I ended up actually meeting someone who did in fact have, because for the record, this is another squirrel moment. I'm a shoe guy somewhat. I like nice shoes. My dad was always very keen on teaching me to look good and always polish your shoes, take good care of them. So I love good shoes, right? Now, with that said, I also hate paying retail. So I have several pair of very expensive shoes, really expensive shoes. Just these two pair of shoes alone from this particular brand name are over $1,000 retail. But of course, I paid less than $120 for the two pair because I searched it out. I put an alert on my phone to alert me when the shoes of this particular brand came available on eBay and various places. And sure enough, I found a pair of originals, two of them, that I got for like I said, $120 for $1,000 worth of shoes. I didn't pay retail, right? But I notice these shoes because I'm a geek that way. I could tell. And I met this person that I said, "Hey, are those Allen Edmonds shoes?" And he says, yeah, these are Allen Edmonds. He's very proud of his Allen Edmonds shoes. And I said, "Geez, those things are beautiful. That's great." And he said, Do you have Allen Edmonds shoes as well?" Basically asking me, "Are you part of the club?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I've got two pair. I don't wear them very often, but I've got two pair." "Oh really? Oh great." Well, the name brand carries that, "Oh, it's very cool," but I knew that he had paid retail. I have to tell you, a little piece of me on the inside was smiling even bigger because I know that I actually got a much better deal on that same brand name, right? For the price that he paid for one pair, I could have had 3 or 4, maybe 5 the way that I buy them, right? So I get to enjoy my purchases a whole lot more. So remember, the first wealth objective is efficiency first. And in the case of Tammy and Sean, it was stop paying retail. Do some homework, for crying out loud. Your iPhone or your Android phone in your hand is the most amazing research tool you could have ever asked for. You can research everything from plane tickets to hotel rooms to the price of shoes in the palm of your hand. There is no reason to pay straight retail for anything anymore, right? Without at least doing a little research. You could just do it in your hand. It's so easy. But when you get to wealth objective number 2, which is enjoyment, being able to enjoy those assets, those things that you've worked so hard for, if you get excited about controlling your costs and saving more money along the way, you don't have to lose sight of having fun. I just remember back to that conversation with the gentleman about the shoes, right? I like my shoes. I guess I don't want to say I love my shoes, but I guess I've already said it. I love those kind of things. I like fine things. But it actually makes me smile, and I feel better about those fine things when I know that I didn't pay retail, that I actually am in a better financial position at the end of the day, but I didn't have to give up the enjoyment factor of having that item or doing that thing, right? So enjoyment is key. You can have, for example, you can go on vacation nowadays and use Airbnb to find a killer deal on a place to stay in a high traffic vacation spot. Like this year, I'm going to go with some friends to Las Vegas for the big car show, SEMA, in November. and we get together and we get an Airbnb, and we essentially, instead of paying retail for a full-blown hotel, one of the big casinos, we get a beautiful condo right across the street from the convention center that on a price per individual, it's so much less expensive than getting some highfalutin casino hotel. And I don't have to walk through smoke in the casino, right? So enjoyment can also come from just getting excited about controlling your costs and saving more money. You don't have to lose sight of having fun. The third wealth objective is legacy, maximum legacy. Whatever your maximum legacy is meant to be, fight for that, right? These folks, Tammy and Sean, had no plans for their 4 kids. They don't have their wills and trusts and such coordinated. They don't have any of their guardianships things coordinated. They don't. If something happened to them, their 4 kids are going to be in turmoil. The county government will come in and decide where those kids go, right? Legacy means get your life insurance done right. Get your wills, your trusts, your guardianships all recorded. Get that all done correctly. That's legacy. And then leave your kids, whatever the maximum legacy that you choose, leave it to them. And then finally, the plan must work under most conditions. So the fourth wealth objective is the plan must work under most conditions. These folks, for example, had no life insurance plans to insure each other in case something happened, right? Any plan that they have laid out right now would be completely thrown in the trash can because they do not have their economic life value to each other insured through basic life insurance. They don't, right? They also don't have enough liability insurance protection. So their doctors, they don't have enough umbrella liability insurance. They don't have their basic protections right. When I say the plan must work under most any condition, right? What if one of them died? Well, if they don't have life insurance done right, the plan is destroyed because they don't have the financial means to complete the plan. So keep in mind, regardless of income, so often I see this, that people are all walking on the same path together because that's the marketing pitch, the marketing path that has been laid out for people for the last 35 to 40 years. People are all on that same path. And so my job, that I have chosen to accept is to flag you off that path, to say, hey, step out of line, come over here, learn something different, right? Ask questions, be brave, get off that path that you're on. And if you're suffering from Parkinson's law and you want to have a conversation about it and ways to maybe change your path, email me, Kraig at kraigstrom.com. Let's have a conversation about it. Now, the final section here today, of course, as always, is client questions, listener questions, and various different stories, things that I want to share. Today, I want to remind you, of course, last week we talked about product allocation versus asset allocation, that golf bag analogy. If you've never heard product allocation versus asset allocation, go back and listen to that episode as well. And I also covered in much more detail the calf path by Sam Walter Foss. It's an actual poem, but it's such a great analogy. You can go back and listen to that for sure. This week I want to talk about economics-based planning. Economics-based planning. And what I mean by that is micro versus macro. Micro versus macro. That we all have micromanagers. Micromanager often has this negative connotation. Hey, don't be a micromanager. It's actually not in this case, because a micromanager could be a realtor, could be somebody who pitches life insurance, investments, could be somebody who does various different types of college funding or retirement planning, or wants to sell you a car, or a banker's. They're all micromanagers who specialize in their specific area of expertise, right? The marketing machine wants you to focus on these purchases, these individual silos, these micro aspects of your financial life, because that benefits them and they market to it, right? They market to it. Without a macro approach, a macro manager people are left with the complex responsibility, and it is very complex, of coordinating the myriad of micro decisions all together, right? All of these various things together. So I'm going to give you an example. Now, this happens to be another doctor example. Seems this is the week for doctors. So this particular doctor, this is an individual different from the previous couple that I was speaking of. He had purchased disability income insurance at work. Now, the reason he purchased it at work is because that's where the disability insurance person was, at lunch, who schedules appointments to talk to doctors, because he represents the big company that covers the group of doctors under a group insurance plan. And they also offer additional benefits that you can pay for separately. So he had just purchased this at work. This doctor felt confident, very confident, that he was protected in the event that he was injured during one of his risky mountain bike activities. He's a mountain biker. So he's like, no, I've got supplemental disability insurance. I got my group disability insurance. And the disability insurance gave him confidence to get out and enjoy his hobby, right? He likes mountain biking. Now, I love that, right? That's the second wealth objective, that you don't really put it together. And I told somebody this recently. My disability income insurance actually gives me a sense of security that makes me feel good about just knowing that I'm safe, knowing that if I get hurt or injured, that I've got cash coming in, that I won't lose my house, my family won't lose the groceries, etc., right? I'll be okay if I get hurt. Now, this doctor, right, said the same thing. He said his disability insurance gave him confidence to get out there and enjoy, his favorite mountain biking activities, saying this, I will be okay if I'm hurt and cannot pick up a scalpel. That's what he said. I'll be okay if I can't pick up a scalpel. Well, another friend of mine and a client, right, suggested to this same doctor, like, hey, you should meet with Kraig. He takes a different approach. Give him a shot. Well, that doctor said no. Oh, fine. Okay. So begrudgingly kind of took a phone call from me. And we got into, just very specifically, we were talking on a micro level, because he really didn't want to talk about financial planning and investments or anything like that. Just, all right, I'll talk to him about my disability insurance. Okay. That's all he wants to talk about. So he had purchased the disability insurance from air quotes, a guy at work, right? So this is a guy who is good at selling a particular company's policy, and he is a micromanager of that aspect, right? The policy was also pretty inexpensive, right? That's the idea. It was pretty inexpensive. Here's the problem. This policy had a big, huge issue. The definition of disability in the cheap policy from the micromanager at work had a loophole in there. It said that if this doctor could still work as a doctor, if he was injured mountain biking and crashed his bike, but he could still work as a doctor in the clinic, or maybe teaching, or he could be a different kind of doctor that didn't require his hands for surgery. He could still be a doctor. That disability policy that he purchased would not pay a benefit. It was not going to pay if he couldn't be a surgeon anymore, because the policy had a loophole in there. It did not cover him for his own occupation. Right? That's the challenge. He did not know that he was still unprotected by the policy choice that he made. He made a micro decision with a micromanager and did not have a macro perspective to make sure that all of the holes in the fence were covered. That's why it's so important to have a macro approach to be able to cover all the pieces. Most people have, who have any type of plans in place, have never actually taken the time to study and understand what those plans are doing for them, where those plans are taking them. They've never reviewed their monthly or quarterly statements. They've never tied them together. They've never reviewed their fees. They've never reviewed the actual protection in their car insurance or their home insurance. They've never reviewed any of those details. In addition to not knowing how these various plans and programs actually could be setting someone back versus progressing financially, right? That's the key. Most people never take the time. A macro approach, that's the approach that I take when I work with clients, is to dive into all of these pieces, 360 degrees. And although each advisor, right, each advisor is good in their own right, this approach, this micro decision after micro decision after micro decision, this approach often results in conflicting, uncoordinated recommendations. To the contrary, right, the macro advisor, the model that I follow, prevents this. I should say this. It's not always 100% perfect because human nature and Parkinson's law and things like that make it difficult, right? Because I'm human, doctors, clients, everybody's human, right? But the macro advisor model, we seek to prevent this from occurring by design, right? We don't want that conflicted, uncoordinated recommendations. In the macro approach, your advisor should be acting as essentially the symphony coordinator, right? Getting everybody on the same sheet of music, ensuring that each micro advisor is playing your song. That's the important key here, right? So, micro versus macro. Please, as you're out there, think about all your micro advisors. And remember, micro advisor is not a bad thing. It's just fine. Just remember all your micro advisors and say, how am I coordinating all these things? When's the last time that I actually was able to have all of these things reviewed in the scope of your entire planning, right? And oftentimes the answer is never. I understand that. So now's your opportunity. Email me, Kraig@kraigstrom.com. and ask for that appointment. Let's have a conversation. Happy to go through and review with you. And if you don't want to do that, if you want to try this first, let me give you a way that you can pull together all of your financial world in one place to at least have a great visual on it, and that is eMoney. So eMoney is one of the best data aggregation, cash flow planning tools that I've ever seen. It's usually only available if you work with a financial planning firm, an investment advisory firm. You generally don't get this just by yourself. You can't just get this normally unless you have a connection to someone like myself. So if you're interested in trying eMoney, it's very much like the advanced version of mint.com or some of those other programs that are out there. This is the much more advanced version of all of those free ones or those limited ones that you might see. So send an email to Kraig@kraigstrom.com. Just put eMoney in the subject line, and I'll definitely sign you up for your own eMoney website, and you can actually try the tool out yourself. It is fantastic, and it'll give you a great picture of your financial life all in one place. Now, that wraps me up for this episode. Thank you so much again for being here. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, the future, your future, belongs to those who take action, right? Those who get off the path, those who are willing to try something different. Change your direction. I'm here to help. I always welcome your questions and comments. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again next time.
Thank you for listening to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast. If you missed anything during the show, that's okay. We took the notes for you. Check the show notes for links, offers, and a full transcript. And don't forget to head over to personalpensionradio.com and download your free retirement income report. While you are there, we would appreciate some iTunes love. Please leave us a fantastic rating on iTunes by going to personalpensionradio.com/iTunes. Thanks Thanks again for listening.
Now for the disclosure. Information presented is for educational purposes only and is not intended for solicitation, sale or purchase of any security or financial product. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor and your tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed here. The term personal pension refers to a marketing name designed to educate future retirees and retirees about the economic principles behind creating their own pension-like income. The term personal pension is not intended to be confused with a defined benefit pension plan offered by an employer or by a government entity.